If you're interested in reducing waste and reducing your environmental footprint, well, this video is for you. Where I live, in Montreal, or actually in the entire province of Quebec, on July 1st, every year, it's moving day, meaning that most people who move on July 1st. This means that on July 1st, and for the days that follow, you see a lot of garbage on the side of the road because of all the stuff that people leave behind and throw away. And every year when I see all that garbage on the sidewalk, I kind of feel sick because I think like, oh my God, that's all going on the ground. And every year I promise myself to make a better effort to reduce my waste. So in this video, I'll share with you 7 things that have helped me reduce waste, I would say by more than half in the past couple of years. Know that it's a work in progress, like I'm far from living a zero waste lifestyle, but you'll see that even just making a few simple changes can really make a big difference. So the first thing is to apply the 80-20 rule or Pareto principle. The 80-20 rule states that about 80% of any result, like reducing waste, comes from 20% of the input. For example, the actions that we take or the changes that we make. So if we apply this concept to our environmental footprint, it means that about 80% of our waste comes from 20% of all the items or all the things we consume and then throw away. So by focusing on the 20% that causes the most damage, we can really make a significant difference. So some factors that we should consider are the size of the item, the frequency that we buy it, if we can recycle it or not, and also the toxicity of the material. For example, you could decide to swap your conventional toothbrush for one made of bamboo, but it's a fairly small item that you probably change and throw away maybe every 2 or 3 months. So now let's pretend that you buy a bottle of water every day. The amount of waste that you produce by buying bottles of water is much more significant than the toothbrush. Like think over a period of 2 months, you would have 1 toothbrush for 60 bottles of water. So the idea is that the most efficient way to reduce waste isn't trying to change all our consumption habits at once, but to focus on what will have the biggest, most positive impact. One of the first things I did when I decided to reduce my waste was to look at my trash bin and my recycling bin. So the day before trash day, I just did an inventory of what was in both bins. I have a compost bin, so my trash can is pretty clean, so that was easy to do. If you do not have compost at home, I would recommend that for a week you separate your organic matter and the other trash, like use 2 different bins, just to make it easier at the end of the week to look at your trash, like it's going to be much cleaner. That way you'll also be able to see how much of your trash comes from organic matter, like things you could compost. So when you do a trash audit, you can simply write down each item that's in your trash and also how many of each item. Also notice what takes up the most space. For example, when I did my trash audit for the first time, the things that took up the most space were hummus and almond milk containers and paper. Next, you can look at your list of items that were in your trash and recycling bins and try to brainstorm more eco-friendly alternatives. For example, in my case, I could easily make hummus at home. It's easy to make and it's cheaper and it's also healthier. I also eventually started making my own almond milk. So sometimes alternatives will be, like in the case of the hummus and the almond milk, things that you can make at home instead of buying it from the store. Sometimes it'll be to buy it from the bulk store. You can see if you can refill your containers at the bulk store as well. For example, laundry soap or dishes soap. And also see if you can buy the item wrapped in a less toxic container. For example, glass is less toxic than plastic. Until pretty recently, I was actually pretty ignorant regarding what we can recycle or not. For example, I didn't know that dirty paper could not be recycled. Meaning that if you put paper in your recycling bin and then you throw a yogurt container that still has some yogurt on it, and then the yogurt goes on the paper, then the paper is not going to be recycled. And more than that, it's likely that they throw your entire recycling bin or bag away because of potential contamination. I also learned to treat plastic as trash because although it can be recycled once or twice, after that it goes straight to the landfill. So when we put plastic containers to the recycling bin, we're not avoiding its trip to the landfill, we're just delaying it. Also, recycling is a business, so items are only recycled if there's someone to buy it. China doesn't buy our plastic anymore, so it's likely that when we put our plastic containers into the recycling bin, it all ends up going to the trash anyways. On the other hand, glass and aluminum can apparently be recycled almost infinitely. So this tip will sound a bit silly, but something that really helped me also was to go visit the bulk stores in my neighborhood. When the first zero waste store opened in my neighborhood, I didn't go for at least 2 years. Why? Because I didn't know how it worked. Like, I didn't know if I had to bring my own containers, if they were gonna lend me containers over there. If I bring my own containers, do I have to weigh them beforehand, or do they weigh them over there? Like, I had no idea what products they had. I was just clueless. So on grocery day, it was just much easier to go to my regular supermarket where I knew I would find everything I needed. It was a more comfortable option. But one day I decided to venture inside the zero waste store to see what they had. I asked all my questions to the employee and I looked at what they had. So on my next grocery day, I went there first. It was more comfortable because I knew what to expect. So of course, reducing waste also comes down to consuming less and consuming differently. The two rules before recycling are: first, reduce. So before buying something, you can ask yourself, do I really need this? And the second rule is reuse. For example, instead of putting a yogurt container into the recycling bin, maybe you can see if you can reuse the container to store leftovers. It can also be reusing other people's stuff. So there's a lot of things that we can buy secondhand. For example, when my blender broke, and instead of going to the store and buying a brand new blender, I looked on Craigslist and I found a Ninja blender that was almost brand new for half the price. So not only is it good for the environment, but it's also a way to save money. So here where I live in Montreal, we have an organic waste collection service. So once a week, there's a truck that comes to collect the organic waste, so the compost. So it's very easy to compost. Basically, it's just that you have two trash. You have one compost bin and one regular trash can. And if you have a recycling bin and a compost bin, then you'll see that your trash can, my trash can is like a small bag. I empty it once every 3 weeks or so, since there's no organic matter, like it's not gross, like it's just dry. So I think I use like one small bag for every 3 weeks, which is still quite a lot of trash if you would compare it to someone who's fully zero waste. But as I said, I'm not completely zero waste. So if your city doesn't offer this service, like, then it might be a bit harder, a bit more complicated, but it's not impossible. I have a friend we used to compost at home even way before we had this organic waste collection service. And she lived in a small apartment, so she didn't have a house with a backyard. So I think what I'll do is I'll put a link to a video that explains the different options if you want to compost at home. I'll put the link in the description below, so if you want to watch it and just decide afterwards if it's something that you want to do. So I think it's good to remember to focus on progress rather than perfection. And by applying concepts like the 80-20 rule, we can really have a significant impact on our environmental footprint. So I hope this video was useful to you. If you have other tips, you can share them in the comments below. And that's it. Thank you very much for watching, and I wish you a beautiful week.